Hi everyone, it's Heather with Book Wild. So today is the first day of the scallywagathon, which is hosted by Hardback, Hoarder, Read All the Books, and Paperfaerie. So this is like an adventure themed readathon and I am very excited to participate. I have 7 books that I am reading for this readathon. You only have to do 4 prompts, but I have so much reading that I have to get done. So I just figured this would be a fun way for me to try to fit in as much as possible. All of these books actually work for minutes as well, which is amazing. I'm gonna put a map here so you guys can kind of follow along with what I'm gonna be saying, but I thought it would be cool to follow the map to the treasure and then bring it back to where I started so that, you know, I'm bringing the treasure home with me instead of just like ending up where the treasure is, if that makes sense. Yes, that makes sense. So I'm starting at number 3, which is I Captain, which has 2 I's in the title. So the first book is Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow. This is the first book in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. This is about a young girl named Morgan who is cursed and is supposed to die, I believe, on her 12th birthday, but she's like whisked away into some sort of magical world. I know people have said that this book gives Harry Potter vibes in the fact that it's like magical and sweet. I don't know, I haven't read it obviously yet, but I am the most excited, I think, to read this book out of all of the ones that I have here. So then I'm going to 8, which is Volcano Bay, a book that has exploded in popularity. And this one kind of has a caveat. So I'm doing Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, and this has exploded in popularity. Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about it recently on BookTube because there's a series Anne with an E that's come out, so I feel like more people recently have been reading Anne of Green Gables. So that's my second book. And then from there I'm going to B, which is Lost at Sea, a book that you had forgotten that you own. And this is I'm kind of cheating because this is not a book that I own, it's a book that my sister owns, but I forgot that my sister had a lot of books, so I like rummaged through her library the last time that I was there, and I picked up Kazuo Ishiguro, When We Were Orphans. This is about a detective who was born in Shanghai, and he's becoming a detective and trying to figure out like what had happened to his parents who were murdered or died when he was young. I don't know if they were murdered, but I think it's like a psychological thriller-ish, maybe? I don't really know. That's the whole point, is that I'm gonna read it and find out. So from there I'm going to 9, which is Where the Treasure Is, and that's Black Sails, has a black cover. I'm going to be reading Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a pandemic story, I believe. I got it from the library. Okay, and then from there I'm going to make my way back to my starting point, but I'm going to take a different path. So going back, I'm going to A, which is Washed Ashore, a book that was published 3+ years ago. I'm going to be reading Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. I think it's like a scary coming-of-age story. And then from A, I'm going to be going to 6, which is Body Songs Has Romance. And so I'm going to be reading Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States by Samantha Allen. This is a non-fiction. I believe a trans woman is going to red states and like figuring out members of the LGBT communities, like stories, and it's LGBT, so I'm counting that as romance. And then I am returning back to my starting spot of prompt 3, I Captain, a book with 2 I's on the title. So I'm reading Labyrinth of the Spirits by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is a very long book. It's the final book in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. So I need to read 7 books in 8 days. There are 2,800 pages. So if I want to finish all of these, I need to read like 360 pages a day. Good morning. So I am in my car. It is Monday, the second day of the scallywagathon. I did not read the 360 pages or whatever I was supposed to read yesterday. Probably no surprise there. I just was not feeling in the mood for reading, and my sister just had a baby, my first niece, and so I was FaceTiming with her and on the phone and just like distracted with babies because babies are freaking cute. So right now I'm on my way to go walk the Back Cove Trail by my apartment, my mask, and listen to an audiobook. I have Anne of Green Gables and Labyrinth of the Spirits on audiobook. I think I'm going to listen to Anne of Green Gables though, because that's on the path to the treasure. I listened to a little bit when I was falling asleep last night, and I actually read, I think I read like 150 pages of The Trials of Morgan Crow yesterday as well. I do really like it. It is not quite giving me the Harry Potter feels. I think I'm giving it like having way too high of expectations for this little book. But so far, so Morgan has been whisked away from her shitty family. She is now living in this like crazy hotel with Jupiter North, her like patron, and she is competing in trials to be a part of the Wondrous Society. And she's made some friends and made some enemies, and the hotel is super cute and like changes, and the bedroom, this is my favorite part of the book I think so far. The bedroom that she is sleeping in like adapts to her personality, and like as it like gets to know her better, it changes to better suit her, which is really cute. And like, I'm a Cancer, and that's like a nesting home, like, and I am not good at decorating. Like, I want nothing more than to have a really cute, wonderful, like homey home, but I don't know how to do it. I actually always ask Chantel to help me like with that kind of stuff because she's good at it. But if I could have a home that would conform to my personality and like fit everything I wanted, peak happiness. Okay, I'm gonna go walk now. Bye. So it is much later. I don't even know what time it is. I think it's like 7:30. And I realized that I may have to change my TBR. Only one of the books. Because I have a book from the library that I really want to read, but it is due back at the library in a couple of days. So I have to fit it in somehow. So it is White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. So I think what I might do is switch out this for Song of Solomon, even though I don't want to, but I own this. I can read this at any time. Obviously I don't own this. I can't read this anytime. I am 160 pages in Anne of Green Gables, and I mean, I think it's really sweet and really cute. I can imagine how growing up with this, it was like a very near and dear to your heart kind of book. I love Anne. She's precocious, she's ridiculous, but why does everybody hate on red hair so much? Like, it's in this book and in The Trials of Morgan Crow, like people are just hating on gingers. What's wrong with gingers? I don't understand. It is Tuesday, and I am really struggling this week with reading and following what I'm supposed to be reading. So I haven't read a ton, but I did finish Anne of Green Gables today. I'm supposed to have finished 3 books by today, and I've only finished 1, so I'm doing really well. This was a really sweet story. I can see why people growing up loved it, and I feel like if it's something that I had read as how did I not read this as a child? Honestly, like, most of it holds up pretty well. There was a few parts that were a little outdated, some fat shaming, some ginger shaming, and like some very heavy religious overtones, which I wasn't expecting. yeah, it's pretty religious. There were lots of people who showed their religion differently and were like different people, and like not necessarily like it didn't show like this is the way for you to be a Christian. It was like, you know, all different kinds of people can show their Christianity in different ways, which was, you know, cool for being written in like 19 whatever. I feel like if I had grown up with it, I would have absolutely rated it a 5, but rating it as an adult, I don't know. I do think for like the time that it was written in, like now we look at this and we're like, oh, there's some stuff that's not very progressive. Honestly, for like the time that this was written in, this was probably very progressive, about a young woman with ambitions going to get education and not really caring about love or like having a partner and like all that stuff. And then I started reading White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. I'm only like 66 pages in so far. So it follows these two twins, Miranda and Elliot, and Miranda has pica, which means she like eats chalk, and they have grown up in this bed and breakfast, and their mom dies suddenly they're in England, she dies suddenly in Haiti where she's gone on a trip. The bed and breakfast that they live in, we're starting to get the vibe that it's haunted. I think we're also kind of getting the house's perspective as well, but it's like written in a weird, like parts of it are written like a traditional novel, and then parts of it are written not like verse, but just very, I don't know, not like a traditional novel. I find it's harder for me to resonate with more modern exploration of expression. Like I just like a traditional novel. That is all the reading that I've done in the past 24 hours. I'm gonna try to finish this tonight so that I can bring it back to the library tomorrow. The sky is outside of our window. Hi everybody. So it is Wednesday. I am doing my makeup. I don't know why. I'm not going anywhere, not doing anything, stuck at home, but sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do, you know? So I figured I would catch you guys up on my reading from last night and this morning. Ooh, this color does not really look like it's my color, but we're making it work because, again, no one's gonna see me. Okay, I'm back. I had to do my, what's it called, away. I could not concentrate and I looked like an idiot. So to update you guys on my reading, the lighting is weird, I don't know what's happening. I DNF'd on purpose the first book that I've ever DNF'd in my life, on purpose. So I started reading White is for Witching, like I said I was gonna do, because it was due back at the library, blah blah blah. I don't have it with me anymore because I returned it to the library this afternoon. I read about 150 pages and I have been in a reading funk this whole week, and it sounded like something that I would really like. The girl is struggling with mental illness, and I really like books where you're not sure if something is happening because it's actually happening or because of someone's mental illness, and it like gives you a look into what it might be like to have a severe mental illness, and I think that's a really interesting, thoughtful approach. But this, it felt like it was done in a way of like, hey, she's unique and interesting. I don't know, I just didn't think it was a very good exploration of mental illness. That just irked me for some reason. And then we also don't really know what's happening. The women that have lived in this house over the past however many years are like hidden in the walls, or like not like the ghosts of them are hidden in the walls, I think, which I love that idea, but it was confusing. You couldn't really tell who was seeing the ghosts, if anyone was seeing the ghosts. I'm sure these are things that we would have found out throughout the book. The writing was such that I just didn't care about what was going to happen, which was a bummer because it sounded really great. And I have just been in such, like, normally I would have made myself finish it because I don't like DNFing books, but I've been in such a weird reading headspace this week, and I have so much to read that I was like, you know what, I'm just not gonna do it. Whatever, I DNF'd it. First time I've ever done that on purpose, and it honestly was so liberating. Like, it's so stupid to say that realizing that I don't have to finish a book is this like hugely liberating thing, but honestly it was. So I started when we were, this lighting is just, I don't even know what, When We Were Orphans by Kazuo Ishiguro, and he's the same author that wrote Never Let Me Go, which was really popular a few years back. So the premise of the book, it's about a detective named Christopher who is living in London. When he was younger, he was living in Shanghai, and his parents mysteriously disappeared, and so he becomes obsessed with like becoming a detective, not necessarily to find his parents, but just because like with what happened to them, he's drawn to detection. So he moves to London, is a like renowned detective, and he's starting to look back at what happened to his parents. So I'm 100 pages in, and the first part was like him starting to become a detective, and there's this woman named Sarah who he keeps like randomly running into, and I think talking to her is like what's been opening up this desire to like go back and revisit what happened with his parents. So right now he's like, we're going back through his memories of a child, and he's like, you know, these are my memories, I don't even know if they're accurate, but this is what I remember. I'm really liking it. It's a good book to get me out of the reading funk that I was in. I'm gonna try to finish this today. And then I also started this morning Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States by Samantha Allen, and this is a book written by a transgender woman, and she is talking about, you know, everyone thinks, let's see, how far am I into this? I'm only 19 pages in, so not very far, but she's talking about how most queer people are told to like, oh, you should live in the West Coast or like in New York or somewhere where there's like laws protecting queer people and trans people. Then she is like, but we shouldn't all have to move to the blue states to live happy and successful lives. And so I think she's exploring what it means to be queer in a community that, you know, you wouldn't expect to be fully supportive of queer people. And a lot of queer people prefer living in red states because they have so much work to do in those communities of like getting equality. It's actually brought the community a lot closer together, whereas in blue states it's easier for there to be more division in the LGBT community because you're like, oh, these are my bi people, these are my trans people, and there's less like, hey, we all have to work on this together kind of thing. Whereas in the red states, it's like, okay, there's like 5 of us here, you're trans, I'm bi, he's gay, but we all have to help each other out. Also, I went to the library today and I picked up a bunch of books that I had on hold, and I'm so excited. I'm going to be reading some of them this month for Summer Ween. Ooh, maybe I'll film my Summer Ween TBR. I didn't even think about that. And then I'll have gotten all made up for a reason. I'm going to do that. I'm excited now. How quickly the week has turned. Good morning. So it is many days later. It is Saturday, so I kind of stopped vlogging for a few days. I have only finished 2 books. I finished Anne of Green Gables and I finished Nevermore. And then I DNF'd White is for Witching. And Nevermore I ended up giving 4 stars. I enjoyed it more towards the end. I think I did have way too high of expectations, and I ended up actually sobbing with how much I wanted to experience the feeling of reading Harry Potter for the first time in Nevermore. And I am upset that I don't think I'll ever have those same feelings again as I had for Harry Potter. And J.K. Rowling is just making it not as special. And I think a lot of people obviously feel this way. But it was just ended up being a really sad reading experience, and I just cried a lot. Not because Nevermore wasn't good. It was good. I fully recommend it. I am absolutely planning on reading the second. Very cute, very sweet, also scary, but there are some things that I didn't like. So there was like a lot of stuff was just glossed over. Like Morgan has to go through 4 trials to get into the Wondrous Society, and each trial to me seemed like really not that big of a deal. There could have been way more detail in a lot of things. I think it was all just like very happening. Okay, so those are the 2 books that I finished. I have spent the past few days really getting into the Labyrinth of the Spirits. I'm about halfway through. I freaking love this book. It is so good. It is, if you've read The Cemetery of Forgotten Spirits, The Cemetery of Forgotten Books, it's like a combination of all of the other books. Like each of the other books before felt like a very defined different genre, and then this is like police procedural, detective story, mystery, psychological thriller, like all of it. It is so good. It's just so good. Everything's coming together. I freaking love it, but I have to set it aside for now because I need to finish my 2 library books before I leave on Monday. I am about halfway through Real Queer America, and I haven't even started Station 11. I am about halfway through When We Were Orphans. So far, Real Queer America, I'm definitely liking it. She is going to all these different red state communities, and honestly, it just sounds like a really fun road trip for her. Hi, it is now Sunday, the last day of Scallywagathon. I dressed up like what I thought would be a pirate in my little white shirt and my golden hoops and like sort of braidy hair. I don't know, we're going with it. One of my like life dreams is to be a non-violent pirate, so this is what that means to me, I guess. Since we've talked, I finished 2 books. I finished Real Queer America, LGBT Stories from Red States by Samantha Allen, and I just finished like 5 minutes ago Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. One I loved, one I did not love. I'm gonna start with Real Queer America. So I was really enjoying this up until I stopped enjoying it. So trans woman reporter who's going around talking to members of the queer community within red states. Great. We love that. We love to see it. We love to hear it. What we don't love to see is that the focus of the book is not on all of the various people that she is meeting throughout her road trip. It is like just a fun road trip for her, where she is going back and revisiting her old like haunts, like where she went to college, where she had a research fellowship, where she grew up, where she went to, where she lived like right after college. And so it didn't feel like a genuine exploration of queer communities within red states, it felt like an exploration of the queer communities that she was familiar with, and that she had found, generally speaking, a home in. And there are some really interesting people that she meets that were like advocates in each of these communities, but most of the time isn't spent on what these people have to say. It's on what Samantha had to say and her experiences in the town. And so it just fell a little flat for me. It just could have been more. And like, there's even a section of pictures, and I'm like, yes, show me all of the people that you met on your things, and like, I want to hear about their stories and what they've been doing as advocates in these specific areas. But they're all pictures of her and her friends, and I'm like, I don't care about you and your friends going on a road trip. Like, I care about why you went on that road trip, and that seems to take a back seat in this book. And so I went and I looked at some Goodreads reviews, and some people also thought that she was like belittling people who choose to go to big cities, or what some people, you know, see as like queer havens like New York City or San Francisco. And she's like basically talking shit on those cities in favor of these red communities. But it's like, just because you have found a way to feel safe in this space doesn't mean it's belittling of people who haven't found that in this space. And so it was just not as, ironically, not as inclusive as I was expecting. So I don't really know how to rate this, because there's a lot of great information, especially in the beginning, about, especially if you're unfamiliar with what it means to be trans and what life as a trans person might look like. That is all wonderful in the beginning, and I was really interested in her story in that aspect, because that's really important. It's not my perspective, and I wanted to learn and grow from that, which I did in the first, you know, quarter to half of the book. It's a book that I think people should read, but maybe come at it from a different perspective than when I went into it thinking it was going to be, you know, lots of different focuses on lots of different people instead of just one woman's story. So, kind of a disappointment. Don't know what I'm gonna rate it. I'm leaning towards 3, but that seems simultaneously both too low and too high for my reading experience. And then the book that I loved and just finished was Station 11. I don't even know how to describe this book. So the main premise is there has been a pandemic, like a flu, very similar to what's going on now, except it kills people who have it, pretty much die instantly. There's all these different timelines within the book. So it starts in the night that the flu becomes worldwide, and then it also follows a traveling symphony 20 years in the future. But then it also goes back to one of the main characters' pasts, or a few of the main characters' pasts, and then they like throughout the story you're seeing how all of these narratives are weaving together. Sometimes when I read books like this, I'm like, okay, there's no way that these two random people are reading the same thing. But in this, I was willing to like suspend that disbelief and just kind of like be in the story. And most of the other stories that I have been reading this week, it took me a while to get into, but Station 11, I was hooked from the first page and continued to stay hooked for the whole book. This isn't a new all-time favorite, but it was a very enjoyable experience. I think it's a book that I'll remember. And the ending was really hopeful. Pretty much the only thing that was hopeful about this book was the end. It was just a very interesting, unique book. Just finished it, and I'm gonna say 4 stars. Lovely book, super well written. Like, I cannot wait to read more books by her. I also don't really like post-apocalyptic books. They depress me a lot. But I'm also fascinated by them because I want to know if I could make it. And then I've also gotten a lot farther in Labyrinth of the Spirits. I'm on page 493. I freaking love this book. This book is so good. It's so good. And this is gonna be, I'm gonna call it for the scallywagathon. I'm gonna like close out, but I will probably keep reading this tonight because I want to freaking know what happens. For those who haven't read the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, please just know it's so worth it. I have not heard anyone talking about it, and I don't know why, because it's so good. And then I haven't gotten any farther in When We Were Orphans, but I'm I need to finish both of these for my notes, this for my 2-year game. So I will continue reading them. All in all, that was pretty good. Pretty successful reading week with 3 4-star books and 1, I don't know where this fits in, book, and 2 that I am really liking, 1 that I do not. I would absolutely love to have a conversation about Real Queer America with anyone else who has read it and who loved it and would love to talk to me about it. And also, if anyone has any suggestions for books like Nevermore that give you Harry Potter vibes or just give you like hopeful childhood magical vibes. I know that there's a ton of books out there. It's not something that I realized I was so heavily in the market for, but I am. So please let me know if there's any others like Nevermore that I should read, if it's worth continuing Anne of Green Gables, and if there's any other like quirky books like Station 11 that you think I'd be interested in. I had a really great time reading this week, and I appreciate each and every one of you who are watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.